Today we continue on with our NHL season preview series. Today we're still in the Atlantic Division, taking a look at the Boston Bruins. How are they going to fare this year, going into the year with some significant injuries? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're doing our season preview for the 22-23 NHL season for the Boston Bruins. The Atlantic Division, of course, is our focus for the first group of teams we're doing previews for, and it's going to be a very, very tough division here once again. Of course, we're going to quickly recap the Bruins' year last year, take a look at what their playoffs have been like for the last number of years as well, discuss some changes to this team, who's left, who's new to the team, which prospects might jump in and make an impact, what injuries do they have. We know they're starting the year with some big-time LTIR, and then the projected roster to start the year, and any questions that we feel the team needs to address moving forward. So let's first recap the 21-22 season. They were fourth in the Atlantic Division this past year, had a real solid year, 107 points, finished with a record of 51-26-5. They scored 234 goals, 13th best in the league, while giving up 212 for 8th best. So very good defensive team, and not too shabby offensively either. Their power play clicked at a pretty respectable rate as well, 21.2% for 15th best, and the PK was very respectable as well at 81.3%, 9th best in the NHL. So overall, a pretty solid regular season. Obviously, the teams ahead of them, like Toronto, Tampa, and Florida, had exceptional seasons last year. Normally 107 points would get you a little bit higher than fourth place, but the disparity in the division between the top and the bottom was exceptionally bigger gap than usual this past year, and I don't expect to see that too much moving forward, since we've seen a lot of improvement from the teams near the bottom of the last year's division. For the playoffs, they made the playoffs the last 6 years in a row. They, of course, went to the finals in 2019. They haven't made it past the second round for the past 3 seasons. But, of course, the entire time under Bruce Cassidy, they were a playoff team. Of course, they now have a new head coach, Jim Montgomery, the former head coach in Dallas, gets a chance to regain a head coaching duty. Of course, going through some personal adversity, came back as an assistant in St. Louis, and now is back behind the bench as a head coach in Boston. And I think he certainly earned the chance, and has certainly had a good reputation as being a really good head coach. So no disrespect to Montgomery, but I think it's fair to say that Bruce Cassidy was far from the problem. At least it didn't appear that way. He was there for part of 6 seasons, as I mentioned. I made the playoffs every year and had some incredible runs. Obviously, this team, in my opinion, under Bruce Cassidy, was not overly deep. I think, in my opinion, this team had some real high-end talent, but they didn't have the depth scoring. Sometimes the decor was decent, but not always exceptional. But he found a way to make what he had work and had a lot of success. So obviously, though, at the same time, it's become pretty clear as this offseason has moved forward that this team, regardless of the results, the numbers, and what the results under Cassidy have been, that they wanted a new voice and wanted change in that regard. I don't think it's a coincidence with the changes that we've seen here that, him leaving was what the players wanted. I mean, I think at the same time, they liked and respected him, but wanted a change. Of course, GM Don Sweeney's been there for some time, just getting in the process of getting himself, earlier this offseason, a contract extension. Of course, Cam Neely's still the president, and you got to wonder, like I've said before, is Don Sweeney really the GM, or is Cam Neely really pulling the strings here? I do kind of wonder sometimes if Neely really calls the shots more than an average team president actually does. That's just a take of mine. You can agree or disagree with that, but based on what I've seen and heard of this organization, I think Neely calls more of the shots than a lot of people probably realize. Now, as far as changes to this team, there really haven't been a lot of significant ones. As far as players that are no longer with the team, key subtractions really only include Curtis Lazar and Erik Haula. So nothing too crazy. Of course, Haula played a lot of top 6 time last year, but of course he's going to be replaced. Lazar was a pretty solid bottom 6 pickup, but he was able to get a longer term contract out in Vancouver. Now, key additions to the team, they get David Krejci coming back from Europe. He rejoins the team on a 1-year contract. And, of course, they traded for Pavel Zacha. That's the trade that sent Erik Haula out of town. Of course, they bring back Patrice Bergeron. He's not really an addition to the team, but he comes back after much speculation that maybe he may retire. He's back on a 1-year deal, same as Krejci, very team-friendly in terms of the cap hit and salary, but very much eligible to make some big bonuses, which could impact their cap either later this year or into next year, depending on where their cap situation sits and what bonuses are unlocked by these two players, given the fact that they're going to be given an opportunity to play a significant role. Now, of course, they're starting the year as well, which you can kind of put under subtractions in a way. They're just not permanent. Without Brad Marchand, Charlie McAvoy, or Matt Grzelcyk. All three players had significant surgeries and will be out for at least the first couple months of the season. I know Brad Marchand made comments, I believe it was today or yesterday, indicating that he's hoping to be back around U.S. Thanksgiving. I don't know if that's reasonable. Could be a little bit longer, but he was just skating for the first time today. He said that with the double hip surgery that he had, it's almost like learning to skate again. So I think he's a little bit optimistic for U.S. Thanksgiving, but time will tell, and we'll see. I mean, either way, it's significant. Now, McAvoy and Grzelcyk had shoulder injuries, and we'll see where they go, but they're going to be out for the first few months as well. So can they sustain a winning record without those key important players in that lineup? That's the key thing right now for Boston. Now, do they have any prospects, though, that could jump in and have an impact? Well, personally, I think their top prospect is last year's first rounder, Fabian Lysell. I think there's a good chance he could make the team. I wouldn't be shocked. At the very least, I think he'll have an opportunity to play a small sample of games at the beginning of the season, but he certainly appears like he has real solid future potential. So the impact, I'm not sure how much of an impact it'll be this year, but I do think an opportunity will be there and an impact definitely in the future. I would expect Jack Studnicka to hopefully nail down a solid, consistent role this year. It's kind of a make it or break it season for him. He's now 23. Mark McLaughlin, I wonder, after coming from college hockey, if maybe he could grab a role, even if it's not consistent. Could he be there perhaps as one of the top call-up options for the Bruins this year? So we'll see, but going to be interesting with this, a different lineup, what we have here. Now, what does their projected roster look like going into this season? Well, without the guys that are injured, obviously not there on day one, looking like your top line is going to be Patrice Bergeron with Jake DeBrusk and Pavel Zacha. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, DeBrusk has played with Bergeron before, not consistently. He's kind of been all over the place, but that's likely where we're going to be. DeBrusk did rebound last year and put up 25 goals. Zacha's like a placeholder for Marchand. He'll likely move down further in the lineup, probably to line 3 once Marchand's back, barring no other injuries, of course, for the rest of the group. But that's probably your first line, where your second line is likely going to be David Krejci, Taylor Hall, and David Pastrnak. Now, Krejci and Pastrnak have good chemistry. They've played together internationally as well recently. Of course, Hall played with Krejci when he first came to Boston, and that seemed to work well, so I would think they'll probably reunite that trio. As a line, we may see the perfection line back together again once Bergeron, Marchand, and Pastrnak have that opportunity when Marchand's back playing. You could always move DeBrusk down to line 2 with Hall and Krejci as well. So we'll see how that goes. The third line is probably going to be Charlie Coyle at center with Craig Smith and either Oscar Steen or Trent Frederick on the other side. And your fourth line likely going to be Jack Studnicka. I think he'll be able to nail down that role, maybe with Nick Foligno and Thomas Nosek. Now, on your blue line, you're likely going to have Lindholm and Carlo be your top D pair. Of course, McAvoy will go to that spot that Carlo has once he returns. Your second pair likely going to be Forbort and Clifton, and then Riley and Zboril. That is not a good-looking blue line, in my opinion, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Of course, between the pipes, you got Allmark and Swayman. Both had pretty solid years last year, and I think we're pretty comfortable in goal for the Bruins. Now, can this roster compete? Can they win? Can they be a playoff team? Can they do some damage here? And to be honest, without the returning veterans that are injured, I don't know. Like, I have real concerns here. That D-core does not look good. I mean, Lindholm and Carlo are good, and the rest, not so much. I really don't know how this is going to go. That's 4 defensemen that I don't have a lot of confidence in out of 6. So I wonder if they might split up Lindholm and Carlo just to kind of have a little bit more strength out there at any given time. I don't know how they're going to go about that. But certainly that's a big concern. This has been a team that's been a top defensive team under Bruce Cassidy. I would suspect Jim Montgomery might change things up a little bit, maybe play a little bit different style. But I don't know. Like, they have good goaltending, but that blue line is a big concern. They've had problems with secondary scoring for a long time, and it's still, to me, not really any better. If you look at that bottom six, I don't see a whole lot of goals coming from there. So that's certainly a concern. Like I said, Pavel Zacha, decent hockey player. Hopefully he can do better in Boston than he did in New Jersey. But putting him as a placeholder, so to speak, for Marchand, that's a major drop-off. So like, your top six is definitely a lot weaker without Marchand with him not being there. I suspect that the goaltending will still be pretty good, and it's going to have to be good to keep this team in it and to keep these defensive numbers anywhere near what they've been most recently. So my other concern is that Bergeron and Krejci, again, your top two centers. Patrice Bergeron is fantastic, but they're getting older. You know, how effective are they going to be? I mean, still, Pasternak, Hall, DeBrusque, they're all pretty good. Hopefully Bergeron and Krejci can perform somewhat near the level that we've seen them most recently. Of course, Krejci's been away for a year. I know he played last year in Europe, but it's not quite the same level of hockey. It's hard to say. Is this the same team? If they get off to a slow start because of the injuries, and teams like Detroit and Ottawa, for example, that have improved a lot, get ahead of them, I wonder, can they catch up? Like, I do wonder if this might be a year that we see Boston regress in the standings. At the same time, though, the Boston Bruins, for a long time, have been a team that I've found very, very difficult time betting against. They seem to find a way to know how to win. Patrice Bergeron, David Krejci, like, these guys they know how to get it done. They always seem to find a way. So I don't think we can count them out. I don't think it's fair to say that they're not going to be a playoff team, but I do think that there's some questions for sure. And I think teams like Ottawa and Detroit that appear to be greatly improved will certainly give them at least a good run and a good scare to possibly take away a playoff spot, and we'll have to see. But in my opinion, you look at the Atlantic Division, the teams at the top, Toronto, Tampa, Boston, Florida, I don't know that we can really say any of them got better. In fact, we could say a lot of them, at least to some mild degree, got a little bit worse, whereas teams like Ottawa, Detroit, Buffalo all got better. So, I don't know. I think that gap that we saw last year between the top of the division and the bottom is not going to be there. I think it's going to shrink, and there's going to be more of a battle in the middle. Who's going to get those spots? I don't know. I'd say the Bruins can finish anywhere from third to sixth. Like, it's a big gap, but I'm not sure what we're going to see. Like, it just boils down to the injuries having a big role, and I think we're going to see the Bruins have a slow start and may have a hard time to get caught up. But let me know your thoughts on the Boston Bruins or where they'll finish this year in the standings down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.